Welcome aboard the Battleship Pretension. I am Tyler Smith.
I am David Bax.
And thank you for listening. David.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm okay. I'm smelling your coffee.
Oh, okay.
I think that's look, we're back in the same room. I know we have been on and off.
Yeah.
Since May. Is that when we started being back in the same room?
I want to say that, yes.
Because I know that's when I was fully vaxxed. All vaxxed up and no place
and nowhere to go. Yeah, that's actually kind of true.
Now it is, yeah. And it's not true. I'm going out, but like it was just so depressing, like how we had that taste of like things are opening back up, and then they just got slammed shut on us again. But I'm doing okay. Yeah, I'm generally doing all right. I'll tell you what, we all spent a lot of time over the past year and a half watching things in streaming format because we couldn't go to the movies. I don't know if you heard about what Patty Jenkins said about the director of Wonder Woman and Wonder Woman 1984.
I did not see what she said.
She said, I'm going to quote from the tweet here. All of the films that streaming services are putting out, I'm sorry, they look like fake movies to me. I don't hear about them. I don't read them. It's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness. As you can imagine, this sparked a lot of contention on Twitter and a lot of support. And I want to start by parsing what she's saying.
Now, for the record, this could be an entire episode.
Yeah, it probably should be. Maybe this is a trial run. But so when she says, I'm sorry, they look like fake movies to me, I don't think she's saying how I feel about like the way the MCU movies all look kind of like liquid and samey and like non-tangible and things like that. I think she means like when you see the name of them or you see the one sheet or whatever that looks like an advertisement for a fake movie. Because what she goes on to say is, I don't hear about them, I don't read about them, it's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness. So I don't think, and tell me if you heard it a different way, I don't think she's actually talking about the quality of the films. I don't think she's saying there aren't good films on streaming services.
Right.
I think she's decrying the way that streaming services make movies seem disposable. They're fleeting.
I think that is what I got from that, especially when seen in the context of the full thing. Yeah. It's not a way to what is it? Something about legendary greatness.
Yeah, it's like, not. Hold on, I still got it here. It's not working as a model for establishing legendary greatness.
Yeah. For establishing legendary greatness. And I think as opposed to creating legendary greatness, I don't think she's saying that these movies are subpar. It's more that the delivery system is actually detracting from the experience, and the filmgoer's experience of a movie is a big part of what can make a movie legendary. And because people are like, oh my gosh, just being in the theater and seeing it so big, as opposed to like, yeah, I threw it on at home, in between episodes of Family Guy.
Yeah, this really made
I'm not sure if I agree with her, but I think that's what she's saying.
The thing is, very painfully, I do have to say that I think I do agree with her, and it took me all day to kind of get to that place, because I feel like sometimes when you feel very strongly, and when you're presented with evidence to the contrary, it's not so easy to change your mind.
Sure.
So I've always been very pro streaming because of the access. The idea that people who wouldn't have been able to otherwise see certain movies now are able to. I've always
and projects are getting greenlit that wouldn't have previously.
And so that's something I've always heralded as one of the good things about the proliferation of this model. But I can't deny that she's right, that when movies only exist on streaming, they don't seem to get a foothold in the culture. There's a reason that before, during award season, when Netflix has movies or Amazon has movies they want to win awards, they put them in theaters first.
Yeah.
Because that still means something.
Yeah.
So I can't deny that she's right. I wonder if there's anything to be done about it.
I mean, because we're still in the middle of things, the idea of a movie being released in theaters and on streaming is still going on. I do wonder if eventually some studios will, and streaming services, like in a situation like Disney where it's the same thing. I wonder if they'll ever go back to the previous model and maybe just not have quite such a large gap in between a theatrical release and a streaming release.
Well, that gap has been closing.
Yeah.
I mean, think about when you and I were kids, like if you didn't see Jurassic Park in the movie theater, you had to wait the better part of a year.
Yeah. Oh, and then when it was released on VHS, like that was a big event. Like you saw commercials for the VHS release.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Yeah. Now if you miss a movie in the theater, it's like, I'll give it 6 weeks or whatever. It'll be on Amazon. But I don't know. This is getting into like things were better when whatever. I don't like that.
But you know what? It's not that things were better. It's that going to a movie, just a movie, one way or another, was an event, and it could, in every capacity. Seeing in the theater was an event. It coming out for home video was an event. The Sunday night movie on ABC or whatever it was an event. Like the world television premiere of such and such a thing. Yeah. That was an event. And I think streaming, it flattens everything, that even a great movie doesn't, it could be special and it can really resonate with you and it might stay with people, but the fact of viewing it is not an event. It's just another thing. You could just as easily have watched this as that. And so I do agree that it's not a way to establish legendary greatness. And to go back to your original question, certainly it's for people, it's beyond my pay grade as far as like if there's anything to be done about it. Because when it comes right down to it, if there's a benefit financially to something being in the theater exclusively, then they'll do that. But if there's less benefit and people are more inclined to subscribe to a streaming service because it's going to be there, then that's what studios will do. Because now we're getting into the business side of things, which I can only speculate on, often rather cynically and dejectedly.
Two things. I wonder if establishing legendary greatness in cinema is something we can even do anymore, because the importance of cinema has fallen, as we've talked about, and people's relationship to content, essentially. Like, I hate to reduce it to that, but that's the issue, is that people expect to be able to access content all the time. So that our discussion just now about like that window between when things would come out reminded me of something, before like HBO, well now it's HBO Max, but it was HBO Now and HBO Go. Before all that, HBO was still, as recently as like 9 or 10 years ago, still like having this model of like things will air, our original series will air, we'll air them a few times, each episode will air a few times during the week, and then until the Blu-ray comes out or the DVD or Blu-ray comes out, there's no way to find it. I remember reading, it was on Twitter, it like got passed around. Someone wrote it it was an argument, but it was written in the form of like a comic strip that was basically saying like, I don't feel any guilt about torrenting season 1 of Game of Thrones because there's no other way for me to get it.
Right.
People feel like they deserve that they're entitled to access to this thing. And I think that's kind of what, there's something to that. This is kind of how iTunes paid off, is that like Napster was like, oh my God, Napster's the end of the recording industry. And Apple was like, well, maybe if we give people a way to do this legally, they will do it legally. Like maybe it's not the illegality of Napster that's the draw, it's the convenience. And so access to art has become convenient. I don't know if there's any other way. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube as far as that goes.
I don't think so, yeah.
But the other side of me says, well, maybe we just need to wait for society to catch up. Maybe right now people are treating streaming only movies as fleeting or disposable, ephemeral, or all these things that I've said. because they're still used to the theatrical model. Maybe if the streaming only model is around long enough, then audiences and the culture will just sort of adjust, and then legendary greatness will be established in the streaming world. That's a more optimistic take.
Admittedly, there are shows and occasionally movies, but it's usually shows like on Netflix that people anticipate. Like the next season of Stranger Things is an event. To the degree that anything can be an event on a streaming service, that is an event. I remember years ago, Jen's brother was in town, and we went to a bar to watch the Super Bowl. And one of the commercials for the Super Bowl was an ad for like the next season of Stranger Things. The whole bar cheered. Like they were really excited about Stranger Things. And I remember thinking like, I thought this was like a really niche nerd show for people who like 80s horror. I was like, oh no, it's clearly bigger than that. There aren't that many shows like that, but that was definitely.
But still, you're talking about television, which has always been something you watch at home. So that's, I think that's different than what Patty Jenkins is arguing, that it's movies that are taking the hit because, you can say, part of it is, you're no longer getting the theatrical presentation, but also part of it is that, like, and I find myself coming out of the pandemic in a year and a half, and we're not coming out of the pandemic, it's still going on, but you know what I mean? Getting to go back to movies occasionally has made me say, like, maybe I was wrong to be so dismissive, because sometimes it's not just about, I'm going to see a movie on a big screen. It's also about, like, this movie's happening at this time. I have to plan a portion of my day around it. I have to account for travel to and from the theater. Like, it's not just that the movie is bigger and louder. It's that it literally takes up more time in your life when you have to go see a movie in that. So you get when you watch things at home, and I'm guilty of this pre-pandemic, I was guilty of this every award season. There'd be like, Warner Brothers has all of their award screenings that I could sign up to go see, but it's like, but also they just they sent me the movie in the mail. Maybe I'll just watch it at home. And so I was guilty of that, because it's like I can get more done in a day. I can watch, I can watch 3 Billboards and Shape of Water in one afternoon instead of having to pick one or another. The other one watching at home. But the trade-off is that the movies, by taking up less time, also seem to have less import.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is investment. You are investing your time, your space, because you're literally leaving your house to go somewhere and navigate traffic, navigate all these things. In my case, having, like, if Jen and I both want to go out, like, we have to have someone be here to take care of the kids. So, like, you're investing a lot in going to do this thing, and then you're investing your time in the film and then your money. And so there is this feeling of, like, going back to this concept of an event. And, like, with a streaming service, you'll be investing your time in the movie, but you're really just investing in the service. And I think maybe that's the situation. Is it's hard for the services themselves. All they're ever really doing is selling them. Netflix is selling Netflix. It might try to sell The Irishman as a way of selling Netflix, but only that. Whereas I think going to see a movie, and I'm speaking very idealistically, but like going to see a movie, like the movie has to sell itself. And that's what you're going to see. You're not going, like, I may be seeing it in an AMC theater, but I don't give a shit if it's an AMC theater or not. I'm going to see the movie that I want to see.
Something you just said, we should really move on to the main topic, but you just said something that made me think of something else about what Patty Jenkins said, which is the word establishing legendary greatness. Because you talked about The Irishman. The other on Twitter, another counter argument I heard was like, well, what about small acts? But like Martin Scorsese, Steve McQueen, these are already names. Is there anyone who is making their name directing movies that are going straight to to streaming, or are the only streaming movies that become events those where it's like, oh, there's a new Steven Soderbergh movie on HBO Max,
sure,
or there's a new Spike Lee movie on Netflix. Is there anyone who is like making their name as a filmmaker solely in the streaming
I can't
world?
think of anyone.
Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone. All right. This was a fun discussion. Like you said, this could absolutely be a whole ass episode someday. But first I want to tell you about tweakedaudio.com. Tweakedaudio.com is where you go for professional quality earbuds in a variety of stylish styles and colorful colors. They look great. They sound great. Tyler and I use them each and every day of our lives. I'm sure everyone is expecting me in this segment when I talk about what I'm listening to. Everyone's expecting me to talk about Donda, the new Kanye West album. It's all that anyone's talking about. It was, for months leading up to it, it was all anyone's talking about. Yes, I have listened to Donda, and yes, I have many, many thoughts on Donda, but no one cares about what I think. So
I imagine people care way more about this than any other music thing you've said during the Tweaked ads. So the one time they actually want to hear what you have to say.
Maybe you talked me into it. I was going to also use this ad. I'll stump for a black metal band called Olhava, Olhava. They've got a new album out. It is called Frozen Bloom. It actually came out earlier in the year, but it's very good. But okay, I'll talk about Donda. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. The album is 108 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
It's 108 minutes long. I listened to it 3 times in one day. That is nearly 5.5 hours of my day while I was working.
Okay.
But I just wanted to sit with it. And I'm not going to be in the camp that's like, this thing's an unmitigated disaster. I'm also not going to be in the small but very vocal camp of this thing's a masterpiece. It's somewhere in between. Definitely it's a hurdle that is 108 minutes long. It feels like, you know, when you read those awful like clickbait things, like, did you know the original cut of whatever movie was 3.5 hours? It's like, yeah, it's the assembly cut. Sometimes Donda feels like you're listening to an assembly cut of an album.
Yeah.
There are literally 4 songs where there are just 2 different versions of the song on the same album. This isn't like the deluxe edition where it's like, oh, you get to hear this alternate. Right. He just like couldn't decide between 2 versions of the song and put them both on the same album. 4 times he did that. And one of those songs is 11 minutes long. Also the other joke is his last 2 albums were both under half an hour. So it's like he had rollover minutes.
Yeah.
What I actually want to say about the album is that I've talked on multiple ways, usually about movies because we talk on this podcast, but I've talked before about like the number one thing that I look for. If I could boil everything I'm looking for in art down to one thing, that thing is honesty. Not necessarily verisimilitude or anything or realism or whatever, but I mean, I don't want to feel like I'm listening or watching or whatever, listening to someone reverse engineering a goal, like they're self-consciously trying to get to a certain place. I want to feel like they're making something that they believe in, that they feel honestly, that represents what's going on. And for better or worse, you were always going to get that with Kanye West. That he, like, this is like every album is a snapshot of his mind in this moment. And I could rag all day about how a lot of, not only is Donda an hour, 108 minutes long, there's also a certain sameness to a lot of the production. So it feels long, it feels non-dynamic, but it's not derivative in any way. It's not self-conscious. It's a really fascinating, messy, indulgent, as he often is. It's sometimes very sad, sometimes very embarrassing, which is something that weirdly is a hallmark of great art sometimes.
Sure.
That someone, like, you think about like In the Airplane Over the Sea, the Neutral Milk Hotel album, like there's stuff he says on that it's like, dude, like that's like it's like cringy, to use millennial speak, I guess. And there's plenty of things, as there often are on Kanye West albums, on Donda, that that made me go like, ooh. But I still Kanye West has not lost the fact that he's an artist. He hasn't like, Sick Boy and Trainspotting has that whole theory about like when you're a great artist, you have it and then you lose it and then it's gone forever. I don't think like Donda is not peak Kanye West, but I don't think he's lost touch with his muse or his genius or whatever. He's just in, I think, admittedly, a very, very dark place and has been for a while. And that's like something Natalie was saying. She was like, I don't want to listen to it because I feel like he's very publicly mentally unwell and we shouldn't be indulging it. Maybe I don't necessarily agree with her, but like that's her point of view that like we should be more worried about like, is this guy gonna be okay than like, how does this album stack up to Jesus is King or whatever?
Oh, see, and that's so interesting because I think, and I imagine you're probably the same way. Part of me is like, not out of morbid fascination, but part of me is like, this is how he is working. This is probably how he's working through his unwellness. And that'll be more interesting, but also...
It also could be how he's not working through it, though, I think is part of the problem. Yeah.
That is true, yes. But for me, it's so interesting that you say that honesty is what you're looking for. I think that's probably my answer as well. When I've been asked like what the thing that bothers me the most about Christian film, my answer is dishonesty.
Yeah.
It is... They have a goal and they work backwards from there. Meanwhile, it's just like, look, even in the most cloistered Christian community, this is not the life you've experienced. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
All right. This is a scrubbed version based on the audience you're going for. It has nothing to do. It has very little in common with what you've actually experienced. But along those lines, I get what you're saying. Like some people can use their art to sidestep what they're dealing with, and other people just use it to steer right into it. And along those lines, yes, of course, you can look at it critically and you can say like, how does this fit into their larger thing? Or you can be like, if this is what you feel like you need to do to work through these things, I'm right there with you. Ideally, you'll be doing this as well as seeking therapy. But it can be very therapeutic, not merely for the artist, but also for the audience member, because you can feel, when you're like really in the thick of it, you feel alone and you feel like no one knows what this is like. And then sometimes an artist comes along and says, well, at the very least, I know what it's like. And in that moment, you feel connected with sort of the whole of humanity, and you realize that you don't feel quite so alone. And so that's a good thing that can come from it, but I do agree it can also be like, well, I'll write this song instead of going to therapy.
Yeah. As you mentioned Christianity, Kanye West is still a Christian. That Donda isn't as thoroughly about that as Jesus is King was, but it still comes up in weird ways. Often. One of those ways being that the only version of the album you can listen to is the edited clean version. Like Kanye himself doesn't cuss very much on the album, but there are many like guest features, guest rappers and stuff. They do, and it's all like drops out. Like there's no you don't hear any cuss words on the album, and there's no like explicit version out there to be listened to.
That bothers me. That really bothers me.
Anyway, all that is to say, it sounded great on my tweakedaudio.com earbuds that are available at a low price at tweakedaudio.com. But if you use the offer code pretension at checkout, you get 1/3 off that low price and no shipping charges. So please go to tweakedaudio.com and use the offer code pretension. Tyler?
Yes.
Let's get into it, shall we?
Indeed.
I'm going to let you...
I feel like our topic is infinitely less interesting than the last two things we've just talked about.
Well, then we can make it fast.
That's true.
Places to go tonight.
Yes, that's true.
Or things to do, at least. So you came up with this topic, but I'm going to introduce it, I think, or at least I'm going to start the introduction.
Okay.
Because I think I came up with the pithy name for it.
Which I'm a little on the fence about, because I feel like either one could work.
Well, see, because you were talking about, you were using when we were discussing this idea, and which you came up with, which you invented. You referred to flavor of the month for like an actor who like suddenly shows up in a bunch of things, and gets a bunch of attention and gets awards and stuff. But then you were also specifically saying in your description in our text conversation that then they just become part of. Yeah,
they don't go away.
Yeah, so that to me, that's why I was like, flavor of the month might be the wrong term to use, because the term flavor of the month implies an obsolescence after that month is over, and that's not what you were describing. So I described it as having like a debutante's like a coming out party. Like someone, and often as well. When we talk about examples, these aren't necessarily people who are brand new. Sometimes these are people who have been in movies for a while.
Absolutely.
And then suddenly the industry or just the film world says like, we believe in you. We want to see a bunch of you. And they show up in everything for 4 years. And then they're just like, okay, you're established now.
Yeah. And yeah, this is actually this is a topic I've been thinking about for years. In different capacities. It starts for me with the Oscars.
Oh, yeah, that's actually kind of what I did too. I looked at Oscars.
For example, the last time Russell Crowe was nominated for an Oscar was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
He had been nominated 3 times in a row.
Yeah,
he won Gladiator, and he won his second time. And he'd been in films, he'd been in Australian films for a while, and then he kind of came onto the American scene with, to a certain extent, Virtuosity, but much more LA Confidential. And then The Insider comes along, he gets his first nomination, and then Gladiator makes him a star. And he doesn't stop being a star for a while. He's in Master and Commander. He's in Proof of Life. He's in Cinderella Man. Cinderella Man and Master and Commander are like Oscar caliber movies. Cinderella Man wasn't nominated, but at least not for picture. But he wasn't nominated, and he hasn't been for a long time. And this is something that happens a fair amount. An actor that has been around a little while, probably 5 to 10 years, suddenly just is in just the right role. And they'll get some critical praise for it. Maybe the film itself is successful. Sometimes they'll get some awards praise. And then there's talk of another Oscar nomination, maybe a win. And then we all just sort of get accustomed to this person. Yeah. And so I think of it first with Oscars, but it's not only that.
Yeah.
And so I remember when I was texting you about this, you said like, "Can you give an example?" And I talked about the broad concept, and you said, "Give me an example." And I said, "Jude Law," and you immediately said like, "I got it,"
because that's where my mind went too. And I think it's just because of our age that we were like sort of young cinephiles going to the movies a lot at the time when Jude Law went through this period where he was just in everything. He was in 6 movies a year.
Oh yeah, And it's an interesting thing. Like, he'd been in a number of movies in the 90s, got his first nomination in 99 for The Talented Mr. Ripley. And then that led to a few other supporting roles. Supporting role in Road to Perdition. Supporting role in AI. Then he got his other Oscar nomination for Cold Mountain in 2003. Right. And 3 and 4 is when he really blew up, and he was in everything. I think 4 especially. He was in Alfie. He was in Closer. He was in, and I can't even.
You want me to run down his 2004?
Yeah, please do.
Sky Captain of the World of Tomorrow, I Heart Huckabees, Alfie, Closer, The Aviator, and A Series of Unfortunate Events. Yeah. The last one is a vocal only performance, but still, that's 6 movies in 1 year.
In 1 year. Yeah. And granted, he's not the lead in all of them. In fact, most of them are ensemble films. But yeah, like, he broke out in the early 2000s and continued to be like somebody that people recognize and would be the lead actor in various movies. And then everyone just kind of got used to him. He hasn't been nominated. I don't mean to put it solely in terms of the Oscars, but that does tend to be kind of an interesting barometer. He hasn't been nominated in 18 years. He was nominated in 99, 2003, and then it's just like, okay, we got it. And it's almost like the Oscars themselves are saying like, okay, he's not going to throw us any more curveballs. We know what to expect. And maybe when he's a much older person and gives a very specific kind of character performance, maybe we'll nominate him for supporting actor. But for the most part, we know what you can do, and we've moved on. You're a part of the establishment now, and that's great. Yeah. And so I have several other examples, almost all from that time period where I was paying attention because of where I was.
I intentionally tried to look up some older ones to see who went through this sort of period. But it's funny you mentioned Cold Mountain, because I think Renee Zellweger is kind of had her same moment. Like Jerry Maguire was obviously big for her and that's I guess that's a large supporting role, or would you call it a co-lead? It's a large supporting role, right?
You can go either way with it, I think.
But then, once she really got into actual like lead roles, which is like Bridget Jones' Diary, which she was nominated for, which I didn't remember that.
I didn't remember that either. And she won for Cold Mountain.
Okay. I'm looking at there's like in the late 90s she's got Jerry Maguire. Then she's got like The Bachelor. She was the lead. I never saw it, but
is that with Chris O'Donnell?
Yeah, okay. I never saw it, but that's she's again the female lead in a male-driven romantic comedy. Mm-hmm. Nurse Betty, Me, Myself, and Irene. So she's this like rom-com. Nothing Nurse Betty's a rom-com. You know what I mean? Then Bridget Jones' Diary is a lead role.
Yeah.
Then she gets Chicago, and then Cold Mountain, which you said she won for, which is like, hey, I can do this serious thing too. And then this is where we get to the point where the industry was just like, okay, we know you're in, we know all there is to know about you. And then like, again, that's the last time. She was until Judy. I mean,
and then like there was this long stretch, and now in her case, she was in a few other things, but she kind of went away for a while. And then had this sort of triumphant return with Judy.
Okay.
I think that, when I say went away, I mean like she was not the she didn't have the same profile.
Because sometimes at the time, to go back to our opening discussion with there being just so many options all the time, that sometimes I'll be like, wow, I haven't seen such and such an actor in anything in 8 years. And I look at them, it's like, oh, they're working like crazy. It's just, I can't watch everything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it used to be that like it'd be like, what have they been up to? And it's like, oh, TV. They have a very successful TV show. But these days, because of streaming, it's like, no, they've been in a number of movies that are available on various streaming services. And so So this is not a reflection on the performers themselves. Again, these are not people that fade away. It's just, look, I know that the, perennial it boy is Joe Alwyn. Is that what it boy?
Yeah, it boy Joe Alwyn.
Yeah. I know that. That's not going away anytime soon. But it is one of those things that, like, you will see. It happens a lot with younger actors. It's rare for it to happen with somebody like over 50. But, and by younger actors, it could be somebody in their 30s they've been doing stuff in their 20s. But it tends to happen with actors like in their mid 20s. And it's just like, oh, who is this? And it's to the point now where you can start to see, I can recognize it. I think Timothée Chalamet is there now.
Okay.
It's like he'd been in a number of things, and people and people often say like, oh, that's, what was it? Not Miss Sloane.
Miss Turner?
I don't remember. You're the one that saw
Miss Stevens.
Miss Stevens, yes. That's the one. And I remember
my top 10 list that year.
And I remember you pointed out that the movie itself was very good, but he especially like really stuck out to you. And then obviously Call Me By Your Name comes along. He gets an Oscar nomination. There was a lot of talk of him getting nominated for supporting actor for Beautiful Boy. That didn't happen. But now it's like, okay, now he
turns out the movie's bad. Sometimes all the buzz in the world can't stop a movie from being bad.
I remember, and again, sometimes there's like buzz and it doesn't happen. But I remember in the early 2000s, who's this Hayden Christensen guy? He'd been in a few things, and he's going to play Anakin Skywalker. There was a lot of buzz. He was up for a Golden Globe for Life as a House. They thought he might get nominated for supporting actor. He didn't. But it's just like, oh, it's this up and coming guy, and he is the face of these Star Wars prequels. Like, we better jump on that. But I think that's an instance where his like, you know, coming out party was so directly linked to the material, so much so that when the material was seen as bad, it's not that he went away, but he certainly has never been as big as he was then.
Speaking of Oscars, I found an example that might be an older person having this.
Okay.
Because it's someone who didn't, at least in movies, I don't know what her life story is, didn't start acting till later, but Thelma Ritter.
Oh, okay.
Who didn't start showing up in movies until her late 40s, and then was nominated 4 years in a row.
Oh, okay.
For all supporting roles for All About Eve, The Mating Season, With a Song in My Heart, and Pick Up on South Street.
Wow.
And then she was nominated again twice later in her life for Pillow Talk and Birdman of Alcatraz. But it seems like she had a coming out party in her late 40s, early 50s.
And along those lines, Sidney Greenstreet, like he had been in theater for a long time. And then at age 61, I think he was in Maltese Falcon, got nominated for that, and then just acted very consistently until his death. But including, you know, big movies like Casablanca. But yeah, and I'm trying to think of like some other examples of people who are not young necessarily. They're not necessarily older. But I think of somebody like, speaking of closer, like Clive Owen.
Okay.
Clive Owen has his corner of Hollywood. Like he's acted consistently, but like, and he'd been in stuff before Gosford Park, but I think Gosford Park introduced him to a lot of people.
Croupier is where I first saw him.
Yeah, and then
it's very memorable.
What was it? Green Fingers?
Yeah, I saw Green Fingers.
Is that it? Yeah. But yeah, those two, like those kind of put him on the map in certain circles, and then he's in, you know, he's part of this huge cast in Gosford Park, and still managed to like get people's attention. Then you get like 2002, 3, 4, 5, and he's the lead of things. He gets his first and only nomination for Closer, and then he just becomes Clive Owen.
But you know, he's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Last movie I saw him in was The Confirmation, which came out in 2016. Mm-hmm. But he's been working plenty.
Oh yeah,
I did see him play himself on an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Okay.
But do you know what he's about to be in and what role he's about to play?
I do.
I didn't know that until just now.
Yeah.
That he is playing Bill Clinton in the new American Crime Story series.
Which I'm really intrigued by, because I feel like I've seen him or heard him attempt to do accents. And Bill Clinton has a very specific cadence and accent.
And so does Clive Owen, is the thing.
So, exactly. And I feel like the two aren't going to go together super great.
Could be fun.
It could be fun.
Could be a pip.
Could be a pip. But yeah, and so yeah, Clive Owen was one. Jeremy Renner was another one. And again, I don't mean to connect everything to Oscars, but you know, he'd been in a number of things. He kind of caught people's attention with Dahmer, and then he's nominated for The Hurt Locker, and that kind of gets people's attention. He was nominated the next year for supporting actor for The Town, and then now, granted, he did go on to play Hawkeye not long after that, and now that's kind of what he's known for. But yeah, there was this moment where like it's almost as though people say like, "Who is this person, and where did they come from?" And then that novelty wears off, and then they just become a reliable working actor.
Yeah, I feel like Jeremy Renner. Well, this is, I guess, we're seeing now people like pay more consequences for being unpleasant people in real life. And I feel like, I don't know that Jeremy Renner's like a monster or anything, but I don't think he has a great reputation for being like a particularly nice guy either. Right. And I don't, so I don't, maybe that's why he hasn't been, I don't know what he's been in besides MCU stuff, in a long time.
He had an app. Did you know that? There's literally the Jeremy Renner app.
Oh, this sounds familiar. What else?
It's because he also has like a music career.
Oh, I forgot about Tag.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I hate that movie so much, but he's not bad in it.
I didn't hate Tag. I don't really like it either, but I didn't hate it.
I don't remember why I hated it, but I really had.
Is it all the miscarriage jokes? Because there's a lot of miscarriage jokes. Which I remember watching them being jokes. Like, look, I think this is funny because I'm me, but this feels like it could rub people the wrong way.
I think it just got me. There was just something about the ensemble. It's like I don't believe
that they're friends. Yeah.
Well, I also don't believe that John Hamm and Jake Johnson are the same age. Like they're all supposed to be the same age. Jake Johnson and Jeremy Renner, I could believe. Yeah. But like John Hamm, and maybe it's because in my mind he's Don Draper and just seems older and more mature than the rest of them, but I think he's genuinely older.
Did you read that AV Club interview with Mike Mulaney where he talked about being unjustified and being, the backstory was that he and Stephen Tobolowsky went to like elementary school together, and he was like, Stephen Tobolowsky's 15 years older than I am. Do I look like shit? Is he anyway, Mike Mulaney seems like a fun guy.
No, Tobo just looks super young. That's all.
Fun thing about Jeremy Renner for me, in terms of what I first knew him from, is an episode of Angel.
Oh, okay.
Where he plays an old vampire cohort of angels, and in the episode, it's in season 1, and he tries to kill, like vampire, bite and suck and kill, Angel's cop friend played by Elizabeth Rome.
Oh, okay.
Who then later they played spouses in American Hustle.
Oh yeah. I
wonder if they talked on set of like, hey, remember that time I tried to bite your neck and drink your blood?
I imagine they probably did have that conversation. Yes. Yeah. I think the first thing I saw Jeremy Renner in that I was aware of was SWAT. He was the villain in SWAT, and that's not a good movie. But even my friends and I were just like, that guy was good. Who was that?
Is SWAT a bad movie? I remember liking it.
You know what? I don't know if it's a bad movie or not. I didn't really like much of it, but we all really liked him in it.
Yeah.
But
directed by the actor Clark Johnson.
Oh.
From The Wire.
Yeah.
5.
Huh. Good for him, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember liking SWAT because I guess it's weird to think it was 2003, like the 90s weren't that long ago, but I guess The Matrix kind of like changed action movies so much that by 2003, SWAT just being like a brawny action movie felt like a throwback. It felt like a throwback to 5 years ago.
So a few others that I can think of, and again, a lot of them are from a very specific time period, but I try to be aware of it now where I can. But Paul Giamatti was a big one. I mean, he was, I remember him being, I first took note of him in The Negotiator. He was a supporting role in The Negotiator, and then he was in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. He was in Private Parts, obviously, as Pig Vomit.
Is
but I hadn't seen that.
Oh, okay. I think of him as Pig Vomit first.
And he was in Man on the Moon as Bob Zmuda.
Oh, that's right.
But then he was in like American Splendor, and then Sideways came along, and there was a lot of Oscar buzz for Sideways. He wasn't nominated. He was snubbed for Sideways, but the Oscars tend to make it up to people, and so the next year he was nominated for supporting actor for Cinderella Man, didn't win. That was his last Oscar nomination, and then he I remember the movie Shoot 'Em Up starring Clive Owen, in which he was like the villain, and that was like a fun thing. And then he just became Paul Giamatti, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And I mean, he played John Adams, like he got an Emmy for that. Like he was, there was like this 5-year span where it's just like, we want to get, like, he has such a specific energy, which I do agree with, that he's not like just some rando or something like that. He has a very specific type. I always thought he should have played the Penguin in something. But yeah, and so. But now he's on that show Billions. Like, he pops up in a lot of things, and he's always good. But and I don't mean to be dismissive or reductive, but from a Hollywood standpoint, it's almost like we know all your tricks now. And if you have a new trick for us as you get older, maybe when you develop some other tricks, you know what?
Yeah,
we'll jump on you. But right now, we love you. You'll keep getting work until you retire, but you're not what you were in our eyes.
I wonder if streaming services were a method of establishing legendary greatness, maybe Private Life would have gotten some more award attention for both Paul Giamatti and Catherine Hahn.
Well, I will say this. Paul Giamatti, BP award nominee for Best Actor.
For Private Life?
For Private Life.
The BPs know what's going on.
I agree.
But, yeah, we, like, everyone I know post WandaVision wants to be like, oh, Catherine Hahn. She's great. We all knew. We've known for a long time.
She's always been delightful.
Another thing about Paul Giamatti, he hasn't played the Penguin. He did play God on an episode of Inside Amy Schumer.
All right. I'm fine with that.
Where he has like a heart-to-heart with Amy Schumer. He's like, do you remember the last time you prayed to me? And she's like, probably when my friend Tig got real sick. Medieval times, you wanted the Green Knight to win. And she's like, oh, right. Thanks for coming through on that.
That's very funny.
Yeah, that show was funny. I know, like, it's not like cool to like Amy Schumer right now. I can't tell what I'm supposed to like based on the internet anymore. But
why are we not supposed to like her?
I don't know.
I do know about like the joke thievery stuff.
Oh, see, there you go. Maybe that's why. I can't keep track of it all, but I did think Inside Amy Schumer was a funny show.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple. So far, I've mostly mentioned like male actors. I do have a couple female actors on here, and so one of the reasons that I wound up pitching this idea after years of thinking about it was a conversation that we had with Scott and Julie. I think it was on air. I think it was on the show. Was Jennifer Lawrence?
Oh yeah, she's definitely in there, and I guess Bradley Cooper too. In a way, had his coming out party because he also got nominated 3 years in a row. Am I right?
Let's see.
Silver Linings Playbook, American Hustle, American Sniper.
Yeah. But he also got nominated. I think his could still be going on because I do think A Star Is Born. Continued that, not merely as far as the Oscars, but now he directs and he's a lead actor who can hold his own with the very charismatic Lady Gaga. So I think he could actually have staying power because there are people.
Well, I think most of these people have staying power. That's not what. That's why I'm using the coming out party analogy.
I'll say like star staying power. Okay. Like for example, DiCaprio was a kid actor, and then he's in. I almost said Who Framed Roger Rabbit. What's Eating Gilbert?
What's Eating Gilbert should have been.
Yeah. But he gets an Oscar nomination for that, and then he's in like Romeo and Juliet and Titanic, and then he's in a couple of like lesser regarded things, and then just continues working very consistently. Gets nominations. His movies do very well, certainly critically, and so like he never settled into like just the natural flow. He is still a name.
So I think this is where I was thinking about it differently than you.
Okay.
Because I was thinking that I would have, by your rules, you wouldn't count Jack Nicholson because he always.
I would not.
But what I was saying, I guess what I was thinking about is that like Jack Nicholson had been working for a long time, and then I was trying to remember the movie before Easy Rider. Head, yeah. So then later, but then suddenly in the late 60s, he had Head and Easy Rider. And I've seen Easy Rider, at least I haven't seen Head, but he's like very memorable and weird in that. Mm-hmm. And then suddenly he's just like
he's everywhere
in everywhere, but everything. But you're saying he doesn't count because he didn't stop. He's still 15 years after Easy Rider. He's still in terms of endearment and whatever.
And then it's just like and then he's in Witches of Eastwick. And then he plays the Joker. Then he's in A Few Good Men. Like he stayed. And so so I don't mean to suggest that these other actors don't stay. It's that they start here and then they sort of settle into just the day-to-day Hollywood. Okay. And then some stay up here. And so I do think that Bradley Cooper, the jury might still be out, but I think he's still up here.
He's still A-list.
I guess that's a way of putting it. I feel bad saying like B-list because B-list suggests like, if we cast this person, we're compromising. Like a lot of these people are still absolutely names.
Yeah.
You know? And that's why it's such a hard thing to talk about. But I mentioned Jude Law. You knew exactly what I was talking about when I said Jude Law.
Yeah.
You know, he's a name that people still know. He's still a recognizable face. Him being in a movie is probably still an asset to that movie one way or another. But he's not. It's not that he is not what he was, but Hollywood doesn't regard him the way that it did when he was a novelty, or there was a novelty to him.
Okay. Well, we've talked, like you mentioned, we've talked about a number of men, and I wonder if that's. Did you ever see Searching for Deborah Winger, that documentary?
I did not.
It's
Deborah Winger's a good example,
but there's, I think, probably unfortunately a sexist reason that these women don't.
Sure.
You know, like, okay, occasionally, I mean, obviously Meryl Streep is Meryl Streep, and if you're Sharon Stone, you're rightfully mad about that. Did you read that interview with Sharon Stone?
No.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. Okay. But the Searching for Deborah Winger documentary is about the idea that like these female actresses, like they're very talented and they become hot properties while they're in their 20s.
Yeah.
And then there's not a place like, maybe that's what happened with Renee Zellweger, because that's what happened with Deborah Winger. She like went away, and now Deborah Winger's like, I mean, she's not a big star anymore, but now she is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But it took her, she had to completely go away. She didn't get to settle in. She had to completely go away and then come back as an older actress. The Sharon Stone thing, I can't remember who she was giving the interview to, but basically what she was saying, and I think she's kind of right, is she was like, yes, we all agree Meryl Streep's great, but she's not the only great actress, and the fact that everyone's mind first goes to Meryl Streep is maybe costing other actresses like a Sharon Stone type roles. And I really applauded her candor there. I like Sharon Stone.
I do too. I've been binging old Jiminy Glick interviews, and Sharon Stone is one of them. And you know, there are certain, like, he would often talk to like comedy people, but every once in a while he would talk to like a Tim Robbins or a Steven Spielberg or a Sharon Stone, like considered serious artists, and they show that, and they like get the joke, and she got the joke.
Does she maybe count in this
I think
list?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, because I mean, she never really went away, but she was like,
it's tough because
in the late 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, because I think I do think it's probably different for like a young woman, because often when they're young, like they're so associated with how they look, and they're associated with a certain kind of sex appeal, and her especially, there is a definitive sexual quality to her when she was, you know, at the height of her fame, like Basic Instinct and even something like Casino.
Sliver.
Yeah, exactly.
I never saw it.
Neither did I. But yeah, and so
Philip Noyce directed Sliver.
That, you know what? That doesn't surprise me now that I rewatched Dead Calm. But yeah, and you know, so I'll say one actress that I think, if you'd asked me a few years ago, I'd say like, oh, absolutely, she was sort of the flavor of the month, coming out party, whatever it is. But to my surprise, she has stuck around as she's gotten older, and that's Amy Adams. Because she is now to the...
You mean, you say to your surprise in like because you're used to being cynical about the industry, not that you don't think she deserves to stick around.
No, I adore Amy Adams.
Yeah, she's great.
And I think that she was in Junebug. She's marvelous in Junebug. Still probably one of my favorite performances by any actress, like in a supporting role. In my opinion, probably should have won, but whatever. That doesn't matter. And I think there's just, but you know what, now that I think about it, and I hope this doesn't sound like a judgment, I don't know if Hollywood ever considered her to be like a stunning Megan Fox-esque beauty or something like that. I think they saw her first like as like an actress who is certainly attractive, but sort of malleable. You know, she can be in doubt and just be a nun who really you just see her face and that's it. And so I think that has maybe allowed her to start playing, you know, mom characters, and kind of without being sort of forced to take that break. So that she can come back as the mom character.
That reminds me of I don't know why I'm thinking of Inside Amy Schumer so much, but there's the episode the sketch that Tina Fey's in when she like talks about like actresses aging out of fuckability.
Yes.
And she has a line, she was like, remember in Punchline when Sally Fields was Tom Hanks' romantic interest and like 2 weeks later she was his mom in Forrest Gump?
That's true. I forget about that.
What I was going to say is, I wonder. Look, the fact that most of our examples are coming from the last 30 years probably has to do with our age and recency.
Oh,
bias.
undoubtedly, yeah.
But I do wonder if maybe it's a change in how actors think of their careers or how Hollywood treats actors. Like, you're not signed to contract anymore.
Right.
Like, maybe the reason that, like, you know, Gary Cooper never like faded into being, not faded, but just like settled into being a character actor, just because that didn't happen back then. Like, you were Gary Cooper, and now like that actors have more flexibility with choosing their roles. Someone, especially, you know, a male actor with more options like Russell Crowe can just be like, well, you know, I'm not going to be this forever. Not everyone's going to be Jack Nicholson, but I can keep doing work that interests me.
Yeah, I mean, I think
maybe that those opportunities didn't exist for actors because the things with the contracts and stuff were so set in stone before.
And I do think that it's within the idea of contracts, and I think a part of this conversation that we've already had in the past is the concept of a movie star. That a star shows up and they stay, but you also know exactly what you're getting. Like, Cary Grant is amazing. As much as I adored him, like, he never like changed that much from one character to the next. You always knew you were getting Cary Grant, and I feel like that's something you just don't get quite as much now.
Yeah. But it also, like, I look forward to the possibility of someday of Will Smith just being like a character actor who shows up for a few scenes in a movie. That would be
love
cool.
That. Yeah, absolutely.
I'd probably see more of his movies. I haven't seen one in a long time.
I think the last film of his I saw was probably Suicide Squad, which he's very good in, and he's, you know, part of an ensemble.
Right, I forgot that he was in there because I didn't see it. But yeah,
but yeah,
I'm gonna see what the last thing, because I didn't see Gemini Man.
Oh, that's right. You missed him twice in that.
I didn't see Bad Boys for Life.
No,
I didn't see Aladdin.
Oh, I did see Aladdin.
I didn't see Bright. I didn't see Collateral Beauty or Suicide Squad. Concussion is the last movie that I saw him in.
David, tell the truth. Did you like Concussion?
No, it's not good.
Yeah, I didn't care for it. There's, you know what? There are good things. I think like David Morse is hauntingly effective in it, and then I like a lot of the supporting roles.
Yeah, it's too corny.
But yeah, you know what? He's so much better than I think anybody expected him to be in Aladdin. Like, everyone just is thinking about like, well, how could you possibly replace Robin Williams? And I think he rightfully decided, I'm not going to try to replace him. I'm not going to do what he's doing. I'm going to do a different kind of charisma. All
right, we got to find one more good example to close out on. I don't know if I can think of one. Okay, for my list, Glenn Close. like had her 80s like big like
Yeah,
like you know,
Big Chill.
and The Natural.
Yeah,
you know,
and then
she was
Fatal Attraction. And,
and then she just became a reliable like. Actually, she still is a lead a lot, but not often, not necessarily
often in
like,
character roles.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
these big Hollywood type movies.
I don't know if this. You know what?
The big Hollywood types.
Hilary Swank.
Oh yeah,
I mean, she's got 2 Oscars within a few years,
yeah.
and every once in a while there'll be something like The Homesman or something like that where people are like, oh yeah, but she's just kind of after $1 Million Baby, she just became a reliable working actress, and that's kind of where she has stayed.
I have a story from a couple of years ago.
Okay.
I saw Hilary Swank at the Salt Lake City airport when I was going home from Sundance.
Mm-hmm.
And she was also, I think, headed out. I don't know if she was going home or she was also leaving Utah. And I remember I saw her. I was like, oh, that's Hilary Swank. I was like on the phone with my wife, like, yeah, my flight leaves. And I was like, oh, Hilary Swank just walked by me. I guess Hilary Swank was in a movie at Sundance. Like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
In retrospect, it must have been What They Had, which is a movie that I ended up seeing like a year later and really liking. But yeah, I guess that there are. I'm feeling nostalgic for Sundance after not having gone last year or this year. But yeah, there are so many movies at Sundance, and some of them have names that can happen. That you're like, I guess Hilary Swank had a movie at Sundance.
Yeah.
Or there'll be movies that like come out later in the year. They get some attention. It'll be like, critics at Sundance loved it. And I was like, that movie was at Sundance? I don't remember.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. Anyway, I think we did it.
Yeah, and
I think we talked about all of them. Every example you could think of.
I think so.
Yeah.
But oh shit, Walter Houston. I don't know. I had to pick somebody. I don't think this applies. But no, I would like to obviously
Linda Fiorentino.
Maybe. She definitely is someone I associate with a certain time period.
Yeah.
But yeah. So listeners, if you can think of any, feel free to weigh in and let us know in the comment section.
Yeah. Other than that, you can find us at battleshippretension.com. I'm not going to say I'm so far behind on movie reviews. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a bad critic. But things have been really piling up lately, including my other podcast, the one where I met your mother. That's something I'm glad to be piling up. This week, Natalie and I, this is a podcast I do with my wife in which we watch an episode of Friends and an episode of How I Met Your Mother every week and talk about them. So this week we were on season 1, episode 13 of both. I'm not going to say the name of the Friends episode because I don't like it, but it's one where Chandler accidentally sees Rachel topless. And then we had a very rom-com-y episode. How I Met Your Mother is a 9-year-long rom-com to begin with, but a very rom-com-y episode of Ted meeting a cupcake baker at a wedding, which is the most rom-com like thing you could.
What, out of curiosity, because I don't remember how you watched every episode of How I Met Your Mother, right?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to say yes. There are some, because I've said that, I say this on the podcast, the one I Met Your Mother, that there's a part like late in, because it was on 9 years. There's a part late in season 7 where I kind of stopped watching.
Okay.
And then like season 9, when I like found out season 9, okay, this is going to be the last one. And like, it's an interesting premise, the 9th season. I don't know if you know, I'm not going to say. I did go back and watch important episodes, but I think there are probably some season 8 episodes that I've never seen. Okay. But yeah, I'm much more familiar with How I Met Your Mother than my wife, who has never watched any of it before.
Okay, so along those lines, so you're going back and watching this show with someone that hasn't seen it before, which tends to, when I'm watching a movie I'm familiar with and I'm watching with someone that hasn't seen it before, I am a little bit more able to sort of see it with fresh eyes.
Yeah.
The character of Barney.
Yeah.
Do you still like the character? Do you
I still like Neil Patrick Harris's performance.
Yeah.
There are things, I mean, this is all of 15, 16 years ago. There are things that are played for laughs that wouldn't be
sure
now. Like him intentionally trying to get a girl drunk to get her to go go home with him while he's remaining sober is like that doesn't play. Yeah, that doesn't play as funny as it might have. I mean, even though not that the show like endorsed it, the show knew he was like a slime ball, but it's still like it would have been handled in a different tone today. But a part of like watching the show, because like if you're going to compare, you can't do an easy comparison between Friends characters and How I Met Your Mother characters, but maybe the easiest one to do is Joey and Barney. They're both like the hornballs or whatever. But Joey, what I'm finding watching, because I'm watching Friends for the first time, really. Obviously, like a lot of people, I've seen a number of reruns in my time, but I've never really sat down and watched Friends. There's a lot of things I don't know about it. Yeah. And one of the things that surprises me is how quickly Joey's heart is established, which is what I keep telling Natalie, like, wait, like we're going to get there with Barney. Like Barney is a person under that. There are going to be things you're going to end up liking things about him, but over halfway through the first season, they're not going there with Barney, which they very quickly go there with Joey. The episode we just watched, we meet Joey's dad, played by character actor Robert Costanza, who I, of course, know from You Blabbed, Quaid. Yeah. You blabbed about Mars. Yeah. That's what I always, and I say that on this week's episode of The One Where I Met Your Mother. So that was way more than I meant to talk about, but The One Where I Met Your Mother is available at battleshipretention.com. You can email me at david@battleshipretention.com. Email Tyler at tyler@battleshipretention.com. Follow us on Twitter at Davey Pretension, at Tyler Pretension. Tyler, do you have anything else to plug?
I do believe that by the time people are hearing this, it's one of those. I should have a review on battleshipretention.com of Mondo Hollywoodland, which is a film that I talked about on the
this week's
on the Movie Journal. A film that I recommend if you're in the right mood.
All right. Well, until then, thanks for listening.
We'll get you next time.
This program is a proud member of the Battleship Pretension Fleet.